Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of Ferris Makes Demos. It's been a while since I did one of these. I think last May was the last one I did. Uh, so yeah, it's been a bit. But due to what is it called? Social distancing. I keep forgetting the name. I thought it'd be a good idea to bring back a second stream every week. And it kind of coincided with me wanting to do a bit more demo tool work. Now, unfortunately, I'm very ill-prepared for today's stream because it's something like 11 o'clock last night. I started running into some issues with my FPGA project, which are really bugging the crap out of me. But I'm going to do my best to set that stuff aside. And yeah, we'll get started. Also, because it's been so long since I worked on the demo tool, well, I'll probably have to spend some time getting things building, getting back into it. But that'll be fine. And I guess worst case scenario, I might have to change some low-level stuff after updating Rust, but I don't think I'll have to. I think that should only affect the replayer anyway. So we'll see. Howdy guys in the chat, W Rider, Neon Eye, Cheat Detector, Tropical Trevor. Sorry for the jump scare. Zokwar, how's it going? So yeah. What I thought I would do today is that there's basically two major things in our demo tool that I really want to work on these days. And one of them is our node graph. So I've talked about it several times, but we have this sort of operator graph in our tool. And while it works pretty well for sequencing really low level details, it doesn't compose abstractly enough. So I would like to have some kind of editor that does a little bit higher level stuff on top of that. And the other thing that I want to work on is the sequencer in our demo tool, because I guess if there was one thing that I want to be able to do with our tool more than anything, it's to be able to build moments is the way that I've come up with to describe it. And a moment might be like a particular shot of a particular scene, for example. And I want to have those sort of moments as like a little clip that I can sort of move around. And ideally, everything would sort of be in that. But it's okay that if that's maybe spread out over a couple things. But the idea is that I want to be able to compose those kind of in isolation. And over a period of, for example, weeks or months or days, I want to be able to create several different moments without having to fuss around with changing projects and all that other stuff. And then at the end, kind of edit all those together in what I want a demo to be. So what I feel with Rocket, at least, is that we definitely don't have that. And the main reason is it's difficult to move things around. It's kind of hard to organize things sometimes as well. And yeah, in order to get there, we're going to have to do some design work and definitely some iteration. But I don't know. We got to start somewhere. And I did actually start a couple years ago on a new sequencer, but I think I only got as far as some basic transport and being able to like scrub through the demo. So I think we'll start by trying to resurrect whatever state that was in and then just commit to using it and then pushing that forward. And I also want to just literally wireframe out some ideas that I have. But I think we can do that after stuff gets building. So it's going to be a pretty iterative process. I need to think. I want to do some more upfront thought than I've done previously, but need to catch up on actually building stuff. So all I've done so far is I just gone into my demotivation directory, and it turns out I actually did write a README for this 4 years ago, but this is all it is. That's kind of funny. Yes, Trevor, I totally have. So, I'm pulling up live here. Although it's actually more like Premiere is what I want, but I don't have a license for that anymore. I will say I really liked we discussed briefly on Twitter a few weeks ago, and I really liked what you were saying. I'm actually not gonna describe what I wanted in live because I actually don't think it's it's fine, because what I can do in live, for example, is I don't think live's the best for like automation, but in terms of moving around sequence parts, it's pretty good. In particular, I like that it's easy to move around like loop points. And like enable, disable loop. It's just easy to use the transport here. And in addition, I can like create MIDI clips. And a moment may be it might manifest as several clips together like this, because I don't mind like multi-selecting these and moving these around, because that's still a way better experience than I get from something like Rocket. So it might be that this one represents rendering a scene, this one represents some just animation curve, for example, a fade parameter, whatever. I feel like if I had an interface like this, I would still be able to, I don't know, that's moment enough for me. Of course, Ableton also has grouping, which I don't necessarily know if I want that or not, but I think you can select and move stuff around out here. Maybe not. Yeah, exactly. I think grouping in the UI might be a good idea. But we'll see. Because there is also like how this stuff plays with the engine, and that's also another thing that I kind of have to consider, because like with our operator graph in the tool, the whole thing gets compiled to basically one function that's run every frame. But it might actually make sense to be able to compile to several functions, which we actually do have some support for already, in order to have like subroutines as part of that function. And then maybe one of these clips could be to call one of those functions, and then that might be how I do different scenes. So there might be a call engine in it, and then call scene whatever. And the call engine in it might just be throughout the entire demo, and that's fine. And the other thing that I'm not 100% sure about, but I'm kind of leaning towards doing like what Premiere or After Effects or those things do. So like if I want to edit some parameter here, because that's sort of the other axis, if I throw down massive on this track, for example, and it doesn't really matter what I do here, but I want to just like take a parameter, and the curve editor is just right here inline, which is kind of annoying, because if I start editing another parameter, I might do something like this, and then to switch back and forth, I have to do this, or I have to like open another sort of view here. So here I would have like two different views, and I find this UI pretty unusable, to be honest. So usually I end up just like going back and forth in here and just tweaking a bunch of stuff until they match, which is usually done by ear anyway, like while stuff is looping. So it's, I guess, not the worst. And then here as well, you can modify the curves. I actually don't know how to do. There we go. So really basic kind of curve editing. And it may actually be too that I don't need full spline curves here either. So I don't know how advanced I want to make this, but I feel like that's a separable problem. I feel like getting some curves up first is sort of the more important part. But I'm thinking to not do it this way. I'm thinking to have a separate curve editor, like a lot of the other editors do. So there's sort of a sequencer, and then in addition to the sequencer, there's a curve editor. I'm thinking about doing something like that. But yeah, I would feel that if I had something like this, where it's like engine init, do whatever, and then post-proc, and then you might have different post-proc instances, for example, that would set different parameters to different things or something. I'm not actually sure how that would look, but then I would be pretty happy, because then this whole thing could still be a moment, and I can move that around. And the most important thing is that I could sit here and kind of compose this, and then someday later I just move over here and I compose a new one that might even be entirely new tracks, which is totally fine. Actually, I would just want to do Control-Shift-T, but that's not very important. And then if I have all these on a timeline, then it's easy for me to like go in here, and then I can just move over here and just kind of play with how these things might look together just by jumping around. Moving the playhead. I think I've been calling this a cursor, but I might change the name to playhead. Dope sheet. That's a term I haven't heard before. I gotcha. Right, so that would be the thing in like Premiere where you have the two little boxes and then you know that there's a thing between, but you don't necessarily have the curves. Is that what you mean? Gotcha. Good to have a name for that. And the other thing is with the engine, and one of the things I'm happy about with our tool is that the engine is, I mean, it's implemented in the tool itself, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I also need like a higher level composing tool, because the lower level stuff is I think decent when describing features of the engine and exposing low level stuff to the higher level things, but yeah, sequencing that stuff is not great. But yeah, it might make sense to like draw a scene and then have like other draw calls. And then to split up the engine into whatever calls. Because I don't really need to idiot proof it much, in the sense that like I don't really care if I end up with 3 or 4 of these that are on top of the demo all the time and then one at the bottom. And then if you want to have post effects, you would add those at the end yourself, for example. If you had like text on the top, you might put it down here between to the end post effects. Like I think that'd be fine. This wouldn't hurt too bad. Because even if I had something like this, I could still... There. Whoops. Double clicked. There, I'm moving around the moment or whatever. And the other thing that's really important here is, again, with like Premiere, I could go in and split things. So I think Control E maybe? Yeah, that's what it is. And I can split these and move those around. And I also want to be able to like stretch these in time. So the editing of these is going to be kind of complex, but very important. Hey, Pixie Nop. Hey, Whistler Tube. So I think there's a lot of stuff to do regardless, because if I just look at some of the notes that I had laying around, like they mention all this stuff for like snapping and loop points and making sure all that stuff is robust. I already have things like undo sorted, because yeah, if I just kind of integrate it with the data model that I have, all that will just be done. But already one of the things that comes up really early is what kind of internal representation I have for time. And Rocket actually has a relatively good idea for that, and that's just to I'm losing my focus here a little. But it's to store all the keyframes as integer values, because you have a set BPM and then everything's in rows, and so you have integer row values for the time parameter. Oh, that'd be cool, Trevor. We should definitely talk about that. I am pretty interested in keeping it decoupled. In fact, there's a forced decoupling in the tool already, because the editor logic is all in Rust. So we have this, it's kind of hidden away in here, but I need to reorganize. But for example, there's this model. And here, yeah, I have clip and selection and stuff, which I haven't really figured out yet. Other than I know that whatever these timeline entities might be one thing that you select, otherwise you have selected the ops, and I think that's about as far as I got. But I don't think any of this is used. I think just the selection stuff is still used. But anyway, this model has the operators, has which one is the master. It even has some parameters for the editor, but that I think makes sense to have be like undoable. And I think some of this navigation stuff is really nice to have like that. And then, yeah, the clips and then the selection. So it's all here. And then all of this is stored as part of the undo state, which is nice. As long as it's all in here, it'll just kind of work. And then there's, moving up the stack here, this exposes a C API, which has kind of two parts. One is to be able to inspect the model. And so it'll have functions like get the operator count, get the operator at a given position. If you have an operator which is an index. Then you get parameters from that. You can also, this also is like through this context, which you can create in free, and then tell to draw a frame. And then it also has ways to modify the state. So that's what these context update T ones are. So you'll say like create a new project or create an operator, change the sequencer is playing, or change the time, or change the zoom. And once that's done, it gives you this editor context, which you then have to propagate to the root of the UI, and then it will tell everything that something happened, which is just like a high-level description. This is more just to cull a lot of events that don't matter to most of the editors, rather than having something like event binding. Just because it's a little easier, and we don't have to worry about lifetimes. The worst thing we have to worry about is some redundant updates, which is way better than memory leaks, for example. Move selection, all that stuff. So yeah, the point is it's mostly for modifying the model and then inspecting the model. And then everything's naturally decoupled. And then I wrap this again in a C++ API, where you have these like interfaces. So this is iModel, and then you have this sort of same interface in C++. And then I think I have like, maybe that's not here. Maybe that's in a higher level thing. But the mutation stuff is in another class elsewhere. So yeah, that's awesome, Trevor. Let's definitely talk on Slack about that. So I know you have a lot of experience with both working with Qt and working with these kind of editors. So obviously a great guy to get on board. W Writer, no worries. Don't worry about sharing unrelated stuff. I think that's awesome. I'm sorry to hear your sine wave sounds like a square, though. I would guess it's probably just too loud and getting clipped. But yeah, at some point I had in here, this views thing, and then I think, here I have this mutator thing. So the point is this: I try to kind of segregate the different parts of this as much as I can for this API. So then like the op inspector, I think. Op inspector. Yeah, this is just the one that creates things to modify different operator expressions, I think. Which will, it'll instantiate a bunch of op expression editors, I think. Yeah, the op editor, I think, is the most complex thing here. And this is that big grid editor. And this actually mostly just instantiates ops, and then also has to handle like mouse presses to spawn a selection rectangle and handle all that crap. But yeah, we need to take a step back first and get the stuff building and see where the old sequencer was, because I think I have like several commits where I like add the sequencer and then add back rocket, and then add the sequencer and then add back rocket, which just keeps happening because at some point I'll be like, oh, I want to work on the sequencer, and then I don't make it very far, and then, oh shit, we got to do a demo, and so then I just kind of revert a lot of that, and it keeps happening. That's funny. Thanks, Chief Detector. I try. But also it's not very complicated because most of the stuff is just kind of passing around messages and delegating stuff to the lower level code, which is probably less clean, but it's more compiler checked, so that's okay. It's probably not that bad, but not sure. What is this? Oh, yeah, that was something else. Anyway, yeah, let's just get this building. So the one thing that I did before the stream is I went and checked which Rust version I'm using, and I need to use Nightly for i686. It's all 32-bit. So I noticed that the Nightly is a lot newer than what I last built the tool with, so there may be some code changes I have to make. I guess worst case, I can do I can just roll back to a specific nightly version, which I should have installed on here somewhere. I don't know why I would have updated this in October. Maybe I was working on the Packer. That's probably what it was. Although that no longer requires 686 builds. That can use a 64-bit build to actually build the executables, even though it only operates on 32-bit executables. But that is for another stream. Let's see. Yeah, so I think if I remember correctly, I need to open this Qt prompt. And it tells me to remember to call this VC vars all. And I don't actually remember which one I needed to do for this. And I should probably update my Qt as well, because this is MSVC 2013. I think I need to build with newer stuff, but I guess it's fine if I have the same compiler toolchain. It's just I don't know if the latest Rust is compatible with it. So let's just try. I think it's C program files x86 if I remember correctly. And then in here, I think it's Microsoft SDKs, I think. No, it's these ones. Visual Studio 11, I think, is 2013. Is it VC? Yeah, I think it's that one. That's her VS Common folder. MSVC does, but then I don't know if that has the Qt stuff in it. Although I can try actually just running. Yeah. On my laptop, I upgraded to Qt, but here I don't remember how to do this. Yeah, so instead, I'll continue fighting with this, but I think it was... We can just try to do a newer one. Oops, that wasn't the right one. Wanted one of these Visual Studio, and I think we can just try 14 and then hope it works. And then I think this also is going to be VC, and VC vars all I think is in here. Unless it's in bin now. This used to be second nature. I do this every time I start touching the tool again. Like nmake and stuff is in there, so. It's not in there. Not there. I'm so prepared, you guys. Thing is, I just really don't want to install Qt again. So I'm totally mixing versions, whatever's going to get me a working build environment. So maybe this works. Projects. No, is that not it? Yeah. Dev. Projects. Demotivation. And I think an editor, I can do QMake. Okay. And nmake. So that's building demotivation, which usually takes up a few cores, so my video is probably going to freeze. Okay. So now these M shuffle things are giving me trouble. That may not be a very big deal though, because I think, yeah, we can just import a feature for that. I think we'll be okay. At some point, I'll normalize all this cute setup, but today, if we can lazy our way around it, then I'm just gonna live with that. We will need to fix this shuffle thing though. Hopefully that's the only actual issue, but I fear it's not. Yeah, also there's a lot of warnings about like just code that needs to be updated, which I might just go through and do now. But first we'll solve this. So it tells me I just need to add this create attribute because this stuff is a different feature now. So this is in the Opus Runtime create, I believe. So I think that's just going to be, whoops, Opus Runtime source lib. Yeah, so we need, what did they call it? SCD arc. Let's try this again. Looking good. Nice. Yeah, the other thing that I did is I checked which branch I'm on. And I'm on mastered in motivation because I guess the last thing I was working on was TA, and I think all of that was done in a separate repo. So we have the tool repo and then we have the demos repo. I think all of that was done in the demos except some features I had to add, which I think I just pushed to master. So because they were relatively useful anyway. Okay, so that built. It looks like this just worked. I think we should test this, and I think I need to open Rocket. So this is the other huge issue with Rocket is that since it needs to be run separately, it's kind of annoying. Like Rocket was designed to for a workflow where you're recompiling and rerunning the demo all the time, and so it's nice to have the sequencer as like a server that the demo connects to. So that that's always running. So as you change the code, you restart the demo, and then the sequencer is where you left it. But when you have a more proper demo tool, then you just have to open two programs, which is just only annoying because the program stays live the whole time, the demo stays live the whole time. So not so helpful in that sense. I need to find Rocket. There we go. Here's the editor, and we can open, I mean, this is the one I was working on last, I guess, which probably has the TAA stuff. So I normally will use this terminal to build stuff, and then I'll go back in here, cd editor, and I think if I just do editor, or maybe I do target editor. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, so that built. And then if I open, for example, go into, let's see, Logic Coma demos. Then I guess this will just work. What is going so slow and weird here? I've never seen it behave like this. That's concerning. What is happening? Okay, this is totally new to me, you guys. What the hell? So it did some useful work. It imported the assets that it needed and compressed them and everything. I'll try to just do this, but this shouldn't matter. Okay. Now we at least have an editor to speak of. And visuals. So what the hell was wrong when I just opened that otherwise? That was so strange. Oops, I did it again. Like, what is this? Why is this so ridiculously slow? This is so strange to me. It's gonna eat shit again? Yeah, it does. Okay. Look, guys, I don't know why that's happening, but we're gonna ignore it because we can. Yeah, so this is again dope on wax with the latest TAA stuff. Kind of fun to look at because I don't think I've opened this in a long time. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go into my Git history and bring back the timeline editor. So I'm fairly certain if I just do a git log, I can find this. Variable store, shape projection, mod. I always have like these nice commits when I'm just working on the tool between parties, and then all these crap versions when I'm working on a demo. Thanks, Chief Detector. Appreciate it. Custom allocator, vector SIMD. That's probably a bug, actually. Yeah, so here, this is another thing that's important is whenever I update Rust, I always tag the version in the git commit. So this is the last version I ran it with, which is from March of last year. It may be worth going back to that and trying to debug some of the weirdness we just saw, but I'm going to do that later. Mesh support, geometry shader support, saver clib, multi-threading stuff, particle resets. Okay, so we're back into Trash Panda, I think. Yeah, and I updated Rust at the party. It saved like 0.5 kilobyte. I remember that. Here we go. You can see here, revert, hack, hookup, rocket, disconnect sequencer. Or I reverted that revert. So I think I just need to revert these two again. Okay, it looks like that was clean. Which one was that again? So 3CE. And then the other one. And this stuff should be clean. Like the demo tool code doesn't change very often. So just to be sure, I'm going to do what I normally do here, which is qmake and nmake. And my video is probably going to freeze again. Okay, so it finished building the Rust code. Now it's building the top level code for the editors and everything. Hey, Dark Second. And looks like that was successful. Let's try running this again and see what we get. There we go. So now we have the sequencer at the bottom here, and you can see we can scrub through the demo with it, which is great. So that's as far as this was. And I think I can scrub and the music plays. Yeah, you guys can't hear that, but this does work fine. It pauses here, and you can see even the button updates. Kind of funny. Yeah, the Rust compiler always makes my stream lag. And I can zoom here, which is decent. And it looks like when I hit space, this plays and pauses, but that's only because I had that button selected. Man, that TA looks really good. And I've been thinking a lot about that lately too, because I've been playing Doom Eternal this weekend. And of course, I'm looking around a lot at a lot of the shading and everything. And they also have these same kind of flickering issues, which are not really noticeable if you're not standing still, which you're often not in a demo anyway, so. This is so much more stable. So I think there's some flickering down here at some point. Yeah, there. But that's actually because of the geometry. It's not finished because there's still a lot of like haloing artifacts because I haven't integrated it with the depth of field. But I am pretty happy with it so far, I'll admit. I also want to integrate it more properly with the screen space reflections. They're going to need their own resolve passes. So stable, but not as vibrant. Like these used to be way brighter, and I think if I pause it, they get brighter. Maybe not. And I don't even worry about jump cuts. The history rejection takes care of that enough. That's fun. I'm totally getting distracted by this. But the funny part is, with this setup right now, it's taking all of the track data from Rocket still. It's just that I'm scrubbing through it based on this time and not the player time, because that's normally how you integrate Rocket anyway. Thanks, Mr. Tube. Appreciate it. That's great. That's great, Trevor. Yeah, I had so much trouble with getting the SSR nice, and I wanted to implement that Frostbite one. What was it called? Was it EA? I don't remember who had that. It doesn't matter now. But yeah, they're doing good stuff. Yeah, Dark Second definitely gonna replace Rocket. I've wanted to for so long and just never bit the bullet. This is as far as I got, and I think I did this in like late 2017 or something. That's been a while. That's funny with these shots when they don't blow up. Oh, so stable though, you guys. Cool. Yeah, exactly, Trevor. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, I want to dig into that, but first I need to dig into fixing the TA stuff, especially with depth of field. Because, yeah, like there's halos everywhere with the setup. Like all this stuff. Well, actually, a lot of that's out of focus. But what's a good example? Here's a good example. Like a lot of this. Well, I actually think they're supposed to be too. I mean, this definitely is a halo around the whole thing, and that's totally the depth of field. Not playing nicely with the AA. And this too. Like there's a big halo around this. When there shouldn't necessarily be. And also on these. But this is a lot worse than it could be. Down here. Yeah, exactly. The stochastic SSR thing. That's exactly it. That's what I'm referring to. Really good paper and really good results. Or really good slides, I guess, is how that is. Yeah, this is kind of fun. The scrolling even works. I think I got that for free from Qt. Okay, well, things build. And that's good enough to stay focused enough for today, so this is stupid looking. I think this actually looks stupid because there is that much variation in the performance for different frames. And that normally this updates like every 1 second, I think. Or half a second or something. But then when I do this, it updates every frame. So I think we just see the variation that we would if we updated every frame anyway. Yeah, exactly, Dark Second. The TA also does funky stuff here as these kind of like go down because they kind of it almost looks like they like materialize more. Maybe that's just me, but I think that's cool. It's hard to focus, you guys. I have Sunday brain. So let's see, view operators. So this is more or less what the tool looks like. And obviously just looking at the tool like as a whole here, we're probably gonna have to redesign like the layout and everything, because like the sequencer takes up a lot of screen real estate. And I think that's mostly natural, but like when we're using the sequencer, I think this could be half of this width, for example. And then maybe the other half is a curve editor, or maybe we split like here. In fact, I think I can dock this stuff a bunch of different ways, so we might be able to even play with how that looks. Maybe not. Can we maybe... I was hoping to dock this like in here, but maybe I can't do that with the way I have it set up. That's fine, I guess. Can I do it like this? Yeah, I guess that would show at least. Like there would be a curve editor on the left here, and then we have the sequencer on the right, for example. And I imagine changing that a lot. And then not necessarily the operators up here, because again, the operators are pretty low level, but some kind of graph editor would be up here still. And again, with a graph editor, you don't need to see so many operators all the time anyway. The other thing is that like this is in like a 1080p kind of workflow, which is not what I normally have. I normally use my full 4K, but then at the party I have something like 1080. So this is what I'm working on at the end, but yeah. I probably should enable nesting on that, shouldn't I? But yeah, I imagine with this as like nodes, this would look more like, if we just remove most of these, the visuals go away, but it doesn't really matter. Then I imagine this kind of density. And if it gets too dense, you start grouping. So then you would like double click this and you'd get something else. So I imagine this might actually be quite enough for a graph editor, even though it's not quite enough for this operator grid at this point, because these things get huge. Like there's this stope on wax graph is quite large. Still not enormous though, but it's a fair amount of stuff. And a lot of these, for example, have a very regular structure. And this would be a perfect case for compiling a higher level graph down to these operators. No, to curves. I don't plan on releasing this. Maybe someday, but that's not really in the cards right now. If anything, if I ever release this, it'll probably be as just like a public mirror where I will not do support or documentation for it. But then just to kind of share the code at least, because like there's not really any big secrets here, especially after I've done all the streams talking about how all the tech works. So wouldn't really mind sharing that. I just don't want to do support or anything. Maybe my mind will change though after we do a proper sequencer and a proper operator graph. I might feel a little differently then, because I can imagine that would make things a lot easier to use. Like one of the major goals here, I probably should have talked about that too, is that like especially making this demo, but also making all the demos that we've made. Like I've generally felt like we've really hit a limit here. In at least what I'm happy to work on with the current setup. Like we threw a lot of content into this demo, and I think it was Nobi who had a really great poet comment about how he had this feeling where sort of the whole was a bit less than the sum of its parts. And I totally agree. And I agreed when working on it. And I just kept like trying to push myself and just kind of add more stuff. But in the end, I remember, especially when working on like syncing this, it was just a really sort of painful experience. And there were several times where like I just wanted to add more scenes, or for example, add more geometry to fill out a scene like this. And by the time I sat down to do it, like I just didn't feel very effective, and also didn't get to utilize the people around me much. So for example, Hoffman or Wobble or my wife could totally be able to ideally sit down and just like throw some cubes in here, like try to add something to this that would add some more details and some more depth to this scene. And because the tool is so low level, basically no one's able to do that. You kind of have to be me to use this, and that's a bit of the problems that I'm trying to solve. In fact, one of the reasons why I went for this operator-based approach instead of something textual in the first place was to get a couple other people to use this. But it's just too low level. So hopefully we can bridge that gap a bit more. And at the same time, I don't want to get rid of any of this stuff, because when working on this engine, for example, I didn't mind having this UI at all. There's definitely improvements that I can make to this, like making these expression editors better would be a really big workflow advantage. But at least for kind of moving stuff around and playing with different passes, this is all right. And I also very much like the bytecode approach that we have underneath this. I think that is a nice approach for the size limited work that we're doing, and I think it's robust, and I think we can very easily build better tooling on top of this. So yeah, like if one of the other people who were helping sort of design this could just sit here and just like move these around, or add another thing to the scene, or add another mesh, or change the colors here, like all that little like tweaking stuff that I do all the time anyway. If they had a way to just get their hands in and just start playing with stuff, like that would be a lot more effective than sort of me doing basically everything on the visual side. Like we always come together and do sync at the end. But yeah, I want that whole moments idea too. Like I don't want me to be the only one doing that, but I also know that if I had the perfect tool, that's what I'd be doing all the time. Whereas right now it's kind of annoying. Like if I want to, let's see, this scene is called Bubble Boy, I think it's this one. Yeah, this is this one. So I do have like these stacks kind of act like things that I can sort of add and remove from the scene. Oops. And so this stack represents that mesh, and I think a separate stack represents like the different versions of it. Yeah, so here's like all the ornaments that are on it. And here, like even changing this color is annoying because we have to like do it in the individual color components. Can I make that like super bright? Doesn't really matter, but make it really emissive or something. I think one of these is also the... Yeah, I guess these are different versions of the mesh. I think this is the high poly one, and then the low poly one with all the bubbles. This is probably morphing around a lot, yeah. Stuff like that, and like maybe they were able to tweak some parameter, like even the color or some of these material parameters. See, like even only that would be like better than the workflow that we have now. And it's just not effective. And then if we were to add something more to the scene, we have to like go here and make a new function and call it and all this stuff. It's just a pain. So the tool is written in Rust and C++. So everything you're seeing here is all Qt in C++. It's just the inner model stuff that's all Rust. So But I mean, things here are composable, and that's why I want to like compile down to this, because like I've set up this engine so it's like these are the lights, for example, and I can just sort of add and remove those just by, you know, so there's a bluish light, and then there's this white light, I guess. I think this is a purple light over here. And I think this is the triangle back there, or no, this is these background things. Where's this triangle actually? Here's the floor. I think just here, so that's the background gradient. Floor cube, default ring, it's probably this. Yeah, that's the one. So like already this kind of looks cool on its own. And this is just like a slight variation that like someone else could have made, and we could have played with it and explored more ideas. So I want to make all this more effective. Yeah, when I started, like now I think the whole landscape of Rust UI tools is still pretty barren. It's getting a lot better and very quickly, so I look forward to how that looks in the next couple of years. But I started this tool in 2016 where there was even less stuff. So it made sense to use something like Qt, which is still native, and then wrap that around Rust. And it is nice that like this tool is very performant and looks okay, but like it is a bit hard to hack on. So trade-offs everywhere. But I'll continue with this, because why change it now? We're pretty far down the rabbit hole at this point. But I would have loved to use something like DRM GUI if it had been less buggy, because it was actually pretty bad last time I tried the Rust bindings. But that was a while ago. And also I do want to have a nicer look than even skinned DRM GUI can give. But anyway. Okay, it's been an hour. We got the tool to build. And we scrubbed around the demo a lot. So I will say this. Already, just scrubbing around the demo is something that I like to do. So I think that already validates the fact that I want a sequencer like this. And I think I called this cursor. I might actually want to change that in the code and call it playhead. But just because I learned that word for it, I never actually knew that before. But let's actually look into some more design stuff. So I'm thinking to have, looking at like a high level overview of the tool. Let's say this is the viewport. Cool stuff. Actually, combo winning stuff here. And then let's see. Maybe over here we have, we can even just like draw a basic node graph here. Really? Why is this locked? Because I picked square? Probably. Yeah, by the way, Doom Eternal's awesome. Just to answer some questions. I got really frustrated with it and ranted on Twitter yesterday, but I feel like I'm starting to finally get the flow of it. It's really punishing. Like it's way harder than the previous game. And especially like the complexity of the arsenal I found to be kind of difficult to manage. And I still find that difficult to manage. So I don't know. I'm still struggling with it a bit, I'll admit, just because it's really hard. But I did have quite a lot of fun with it. A couple points last night. Yeah, congrats on the new PC. I really want to make a new Ryzen build, but it'll probably be a while until I'm able to do that. Yeah, definitely proper old school shooter. It's extremely punishing. say something like this, and then I think we have some space for the profiler, which a lot of the time you can just hide away. Let's say profiler down here. Yeah, platforming parts are annoying because it's just like, why? Like every time I get to the platforming parts, I'm just like, who is this for? Definitely not me. But the game's gorgeous. That's a fact. Am I getting rated? I've never been rated before. So that's cool. I would definitely say play Doom 2016 first. Doom 2016 was so good. What a fun game. So far, I like Doom 2016 more than Doom Eternal. Schmooster, thanks for the follow. Hey, Gamozo and Geek Pirate. Yeah, lots of Rust on my streams. If you like hanging out and you like Rust, good place to be. Yeah, I feel the same, Ranza. So yeah, there's some things I'm unsure about with like sort of the design of this timeline, but we can kind of try to block out some of that stuff here. So obviously here there's some like transport and stuff. Like I'm basically just wireframing what we already have here. So we can just block this off for like transport. And then down here is where like, I guess you could say the magic happens. So here, yeah, I miss the paint diagrams, to be honest, but this I'll have to do. So I definitely know that I want some kind of concept of tracks, but I'm thinking that the tracks are not going to be always the same thing. I think these will more just be like slots where you can put stuff. I think it's a better way to think of them. And then this would scroll. So I imagine like sort of blocks that you can kind of place anywhere on here. And then you can move these around. And I also imagine them being like colorable. And of course you can make these like different widths. And there would be a lot of freedom here, I imagine. Yeah, Geek Parrot, we're working on a sequencer for our 64K demo tool, which I think will be pretty good once we figure out how it's going to work and stuff. Yeah, Aaron the German, it's totally a coincidence. I was so happy when I found that, though. But yeah, definitely a coincidence. I'm not too deep with this incarnation. It's pretty much this. What you see here, which so it has some basic transport. I can like play and pause and scrub and zoom. That's about all I have so far. Yeah, the tool itself I'm pretty deep in, but the sequencer is pretty new. Actually, I think I wrote all this code in 2017 and then haven't touched it since, because we use a separate sequencer when we actually make the demos. And I've been trying to move away from this and replace it with this workflow. No, the GUI is cute in C++, and then the core editor logic and all the data model and everything, that's all in Rust. That's a bit of a mix. But that said, a lot of these editor components are custom, but they're implemented in Qt. Yeah, no worries, Geek Pirate. Appreciate the questions. So yeah, I imagine the sequencer to end up looking something like this. And then maybe we have some post-proc stuff down here that runs for the whole demo, for example. I guess I can draw this sort of scrubber, but it's not really important actually. So there are a couple things that I'm going to want to be pretty important here. For example, I want there to be some kind of like looping. So I guess we can do something like this, or maybe I can, I mean, this is just representative. That's not enough to see it even. Maybe we could do that. It's a bit better. So imagine having like these loop points, which you would typically put around a given scene, for example. Yeah, GUI and JavaScript and backend in C++. I mean, I guess that wouldn't be the worst idea here, but I don't know. Anyway. So the idea here is that if you play, it'll just like loop this section, which would be really nice. Normally we have that for working with music, but I imagine for working on a demo, it'd be really cool too. So we could like change parameters as we're flying through a few different camera angles that we've laid out, for example. That's something I imagine that we would do a lot. That Moldo, thanks for the follow. So yeah, these blocks, I don't like, there will be sort of curves inside them. Originally I was thinking like that they would actually have curves like in them, like visible like this. But I think that that's not a very good idea. I think that's not what I want. I think I want something more Premiere-like. So what you do is you would select one of these. And then the selected one, you then have a bunch of curves here. And so then in this view, I guess this would be a curve editor. Here you would also have some kind of like tracks concept, but this would be for a bunch of variables that you'd be editing in this curve. So you'd select this and then you'd get a bunch of curves in here, which this is a good way to draw curves in this tool. What? Maybe not. Get some crazy stuff. Oh, because I want to move that point. That's why. Yeah, there we have a crazy curve that's in here. And I imagine like, let's see. I think that will actually move with this now. Maybe not. That's fine. Because these curves, in addition to the curves, they need some kind of way to identify them. Oops. So let's be here. Oh, Resolve does the curves inline. I didn't realize. I mean, it might actually make sense to do that. Like, so Ableton Live is similar, where we would have curves like this, and you can expand these out. So if I expand these, I mean, this is just MIDI. If I think I edited a curve down here at some point earlier today. This one, yeah, where this has curves that you can expand inline. But then you'd have them overlapping and be able to modify these points here. I can't seem to make a decision for what I want. But I definitely know that I want to have like multiple curves. And I was kind of thinking tracked curves like this, but maybe it actually makes sense to put them in here, and then you can kind of fold and zoom in and all that stuff. Because you could like unfold multiple of these and have multiple values in there. But I imagine it might get messy with like camera curves. So I'm not entirely sure what I want for that. And I guess that's kind of the hard part, because it's hard to want to just start hacking on like a data model when I don't really know what's going to be in here. I do know that I want some kind of clips here. And I think that's what I was going to call them, as clips. And I think in the code, I actually started on a little bit of that, which is this. So right now I just have some start and end time. Yeah, I could make it dynamic. Not really sure. But I definitely know that I want to be able to drag clips around. So maybe I actually defer some of these decisions for now. Like this. And start, because I can start working on some of this. I think what I'm getting at is I actually need to like look at more timelines and play with them. Probably watch a bunch of like tutorial videos for After Effects and Premiere and Resolve, and see what kind of thing I would like to have. But again, I think I can get started on implementing these clips at least. And with this kind of like tracks idea, at least there I can start by just having these clips and having them be sort of like a fixed height at least. And I can worry about things like expanding them later, because that's the kind of UI that I've done before, and I'm not too worried about like coding myself into a corner about that. But then I can at least get started and start having these things that I move around on the timeline. I didn't look at Adobe Animate. I should look at that as well. I'm totally a big fan of like ripping how a lot of other editors work for this kind of thing, because yeah, why reinvent all the wheels? Some wheels I can reinvent. Yeah, I need those custom emotes. I keep forgetting. I also want basic stuff like middle mouse should move around. Trevor, I always find editing handles hard to design for this, like handles or hotkey decisions for how to stretch instead of trim. Yeah, I definitely know what you mean. I know one thing that really helps there is when you have the feedback where your cursor changes. So like here at the end, so you see that changes. And then here, and then if I were to hold Alt or something, then I would want that to be stretching instead, probably. At least I remember that's more or less how it was in Premiere. And I do want to be able to stretch these. I definitely know that's for sure. Like if this contains a bunch of curves that go from like some 0 to 1 time, I want to be able to take this and stretch it. So this same curve is then stretched over more or less time. But normally this would be like truncating it, so you'd only get a clip that views part of this. But then sometimes I want to split this, for example. So I guess already there's an important distinction about the data model that kind of jumps out, that this like collection of curves is actually a separate entity to this view into that selection of curves. So a clip, if that's what I want to call this, is like there may be multiple clips that use the same set of curves. And that scares me a little bit, actually, because Thanks for the links, guys, by the way. That's really cool. But what I don't like about that idea about having those separate is then I need some kind of like garbage collection strategy in the tool. And if you have like two clips that refer to the same thing and then you end up changing the curves in one of them, you might have edited something for something else, which I feel like you actually never want, you know? I'm thinking actually that like if you split this into two clips, I think you might just fork the whole thing. Maybe that's the editor that I actually want. Premiere has a clip bin, so clip is a bunch of curves, and then on the timeline it's an instance. Yeah, I guess that's what I'm describing in that case, where this would be the clip bin, and then each one of these is a clip, and then you have an instance. Yeah, I'm thinking that for a demo, you probably always want to fork if you take one of these. Yeah, stream lag. But maybe that's what I do then. Maybe I actually have all of these always. If a clip always just has a bunch of curves, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. A sequencer has tracks. No, a sequencer just has clips, and these tracks are kind of just a manifestation of, or visualization of the Y position of the clips. And also there will be some ordering constraint here as well, because if these curves here, for example, if we're going to edit a variable, which is kind of what I imagine, for example, this is fade, and this might be cam X, for example. If we edit fade in this clip and we also edit fade in this clip, then one of these has to take priority, and I'm thinking the bottom one would, which I guess is backwards to kind of the layers in Premiere or something, but it fits more with the rest of the tool, where the bottom thing happens after the top thing, which is like that in the operator grids. And I'm also going to use the Y component in the graph editor to sequence those as well. So, which I think Notch does. So then I'll keep it consistent by having the lower one takes precedence. Yeah, that's also true, Trevor. Is that when exporting the data, it might be that like we can deduplicate a bunch of stuff. So I think that's how I'd want to do it. I think I'd want to take the approach where you always fork, and then we can dedupe when we export. I think that's what I would want to do. Just because from a workflow perspective, I think it'd be annoying to like, and also in building a UI, I think it'd be annoying to manage. Like you'd need another UI to manage clip bins and like which instances they're attached to. Or at least I guess when you select an instance, you could see which clip bin it is. And then you want like a copy or deep copy and all that stuff. That doesn't seem very fun. I guess it's the thing I'm optimizing for. Because I actually also think it is likely that we would make, like, if we made a fade clip. So if I copy this, for example, and this fade, we're doing some kind of screen flash. I'm sure this is a case you've been thinking about as well. We're going to fork that all over the place. Little flashes on kick drums and stuff. But then after I fork this a bunch of times, I find out, oh, this one fades too bright. So then I want to just double click in there and then edit that one. And then I don't want it to affect the other ones. And if I want to apply that more places, then I'll copy this and then put it here again. And that actually matches what I do in Live. I think Live also, like if you add a bunch of MIDI here, doesn't really matter what this is, just as long as we have something to show. Oops, not Alt Tab. Yeah. Then when I copy this, I actually like fork this. So then I say, okay, good. Then I can play this 4 times, and then I go in here and I want to edit this note on this 4th time, and I haven't edited the other ones. So I think that's actually the workflow I want, and I think this validates that. But you're totally right. For export, I think that's a good point, that we would probably want to dedupe. But you don't have to for the first iteration, which I probably wouldn't do that. Yeah, if I wanted to add the screen shake to the clips, yeah, I'd probably do that as another clip because I know that in a lot of the editing that I do, I'd like to make those different anyway. But at the same time, I also wouldn't mind. Well, I guess it would be a problem if I added a particular screen shake and then I wanted to copy that. So maybe I do that on another track, or I'm not really sure. Could be done on another one, but yeah, it would be annoying. Maybe I could actually like do some kind of clip merging too. Like you select multiple clips, and that'd probably be a good thing to do. In that case, then you could add another clip for the screen shake, like underneath. And then you could copy and paste that and then merge all those together or something. I'm not really sure. All right, so Vegas actually gives you the option. I don't want to have to think about that decision every time, I think. Yeah, I think I actually already feel fairly decided that I want to just fork everything all the time. I think that mostly matches what I want to do with Ableton, for example. And also, that being said, I think actually if there's ever a tie between different like ways of doing things, I should actually probably always break ties in favor of what Ableton does, because the target users of this tool is going to be me, Ian, Martin, and my wife, and 3 of the 4 of those people use Ableton, so it's probably a good idea to make that as intuitive as possible. And then maybe I do want curves in line, if I'm talking about that too. I'm really undecided about that one. But I probably want curves separate. We'll have to see. But the other thing about these kind of curves is that normally they're going to have a target, which is some kind of variable. And that plays really nicely with the existing stuff I have here, because here you can like declare variables with some value. Especially for like simple float variables, that makes a lot of sense. But at the same time, there's also some of these clips that I don't want to just set a variable. So for example, one thing I could do is I could have this is the draw call, and then all these might set variables to select a scene. And I guess that works as long as I have the compiler kind of organizing scenes the right way. Then maybe that's not too bad. But I don't, it also feels very indirect, where it would be more direct if I had some clips that could say draw a scene. And then you could change some variables on top of that. Yeah, you could have that too. If these are both 2 views in the same thing, then you'd want the other stuff to be highlighted. The downside there, though, is you might be really zoomed in working on like this part of the demo, and then you might change something here. So, and it changes something you didn't see highlighted. Yeah, I think I'm going to fork all the time. Which makes the data model easier, because then there's no indirection. I also think editor-wise, this would be a pure editor feature. I would actually want some kind of handles on the tracks here, such that I could move them around, and all that would do is just swap around all the clips that are on those tracks. Because I think, again, the tracks here wouldn't actually be anything meaningful. I think they're just sort of anchor points for the clips. So the clip would have, if we were to look at the data, the clip would have a start time and an end time. And I'm also unsure about if this should be F64 or not, or what data type this should be. it might be best to do this in frames. It might be best to do this based on some kind of BPM, which we're talking about like moments. I normally don't want to work in a BPM, but it's probably fine if I do. So maybe that makes the most sense. And then there would be some kind of unit based on bars, I guess, or we would find some granularity. And then these would have like a track index, which would be one of these. Maybe I want to call this slots, which I think more naturally describes what I want here, because I don't consider these tracks. I just consider them kind of places where you can put these clips. So slot, I think it's a good, yeah. No worries, Aaron. I really appreciate the discussion. Even if I'm pretty decided, I think it's good to discuss. I mean, that's why I'm like wireframing this, not actually implementing it, because it's important to at least get it somewhat sensible before I start writing a lot of code, which this will take a fair amount of code to write. So I don't think it'll be like terribly difficult. But yeah, then I like the idea of calling these slots. Whereas Ableton, you definitely have tracks, because these also have some inherent meaning. Like all the stuff that's on this track is routed into this instrument rack, which is specific for that track. And it may be later that I want to add like some kind of slot grouping, but I could be very wrong here, but I think that these timelines are going to get not nearly as unwieldy as they do in live. These get really complex. I should actually open. My project names are so stupid. But if I open, oops. Layers also works, but I don't think I want to call them layers. And the reason why is because I don't think they always sort of map to visual layers. Especially these ones that are just going to like override a value. So if this were a video sequencer, I think that would be the most natural name. But since not all of these will represent that concept, I think slots is better. This will take a while to load the project that I chose, but I just want to show like a realistic example from a track. And I don't think the demo timelines will get that complex. Because the other thing is with this kind of model, since each one of these tracks is specific to a specific like chain of audio devices, you don't get to reuse the real estate in the sequencer. So like I can't just dedicate one slot to all the fades for all the effects, which I think would be natural to do here. Like this is all the screen fades regardless of which effect is being shown here, for example. And then that's kind of nice workflow wise, because I know if I always look at this slot, all these things are my screen fades. Like it's kind of nice to navigate those as a user of this. Whereas because these tracks have specific meaning in Ableton, you don't really get that luxury unless you have it routed such that this is some kind of fade that a lot of tracks are routed into. And that's, I guess, something you do less, at least in the audio work that I do. Like a similar kind of fade value that semantically means something similar to a bunch of tracks. You don't really get to share the same track if they actually are modifying different things. So yeah, I like the idea that there's, I'm gonna continue calling these clips until I decide that there's something better, but clips that can be in different slots and on different parts, like, yeah, because this is the time axis. So you have the time axis and the slot axis. And slots are always, of course, integers. And maybe I want to like have the ability to reorder slots, but all that's really going to do is just reorder the clips that are on those slots. And that would be a pure editor feature. So it would look to the data model the same as if I had just moved around all the clips. And then we're still left with the question of, yeah, naming things is hard. It's the two hard things in computer science. It's naming things, cache invalidation, and off by one errors. That's the two hardest things. So I'm still a little unsure if I want the curves inline. I know when I work in Ableton, I really like that they're inline. And it may be nice to not have like a separate editor view for that, but I'm not sure, because it is going to be hierarchical in the sense that we're going to have several slots here. I always end up with really long variable names, and it just doesn't bother me at all. But I know it bugs a lot of other people, colleagues included. I like there is a hierarchical thing here where a clip will have multiple tracks. These I would call tracks, because this to me has this more natural mapping of like the things that happen here are specific to this one thing. Yeah, that's a good point, Trevor. I could just render the curves and then see if I need to break it out into another editor. If I understood you correctly. Exactly, Alcama. Okay, so finally this project loaded, and it looks like it's, yeah, missing files. Who cares? This is the acid track that I did for Solskogen, or not Solskogen, Tursock last year. And there's a good little over 100 tracks. I don't think there would be for a demo. And so a lot of these tracks, if you look at them too, it's like, here's just a little bit of MIDI on this one track, because these are a specific instrument. Like this is excuse me, talking's hard. This is a specific bass sound. And especially with a lot of this kind of dubstep-y composition, like you'll have a bunch of sounds where a sound will like have one thing and then another sound will do another thing. And so you move around between sounds a lot. And so you end up with a lot of extra tracks here. And there's a lot of empty space on this sequencer, which is basically only such, or only like that, because I have a lot of these tracks that go to specific instruments. And so I imagined you'd end up with a similar scenario here, except I don't think that you would naturally organize too many of these tracks inside the same clip. That doesn't seem very likely to me. I know that in practice, for example, if we look at the Dope on Wax Rocket project, we actually can gather some information about like how many per effect tracks we actually end up with, and I don't think it's very many. So this is this cute. Let's look at one. Like, I don't know which one would be very complicated. This is the waxing at the end, and so we have like some different SDF selectors and the mix between the two, and there's this twist parameter and this plasma. So this waxing has, this is all camera stuff too, which we would reuse a track for, or reuse a slot for, I should say. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, because I have a time parameter here, which I don't know if we would have, probably would. But there's 10 tracks that are specific to that effect. And having 10 of those here, I don't think would be very overwhelming. So that seems to make a lot of sense. Yeah, Ducky Boys. Yeah, that's the track names here are complete garbage. But Ducky Boys, what that is in this kind of composition, you often do sidechain compression. In this case, I actually don't do sidechain compression. I do a specific envelope curve that's triggered by MIDI, and that's just for more control, but it has the same effect. So when the kick hits and when the snare hits, it'll duck all of the content going through this particular group. So basically, almost every track is actually routed to that group, other than I think this is the kick, or no, this is some impact thing. That's probably in the wrong place. Just looking at the shape of that. Yeah, the kicks are down here. And I think the snare is got to be somewhere around here. The snare shouldn't duck. Yeah, this is the snare. The kick and snare. And then I have some MIDI trigger. So like this is the MIDI trigger for the kick, I think. Or oh, I see. It actually doesn't duck for the snare. It just ducks for the kick. Unless yeah. And then I have two different kicks in the track. That's what those two things were. So yeah, Ducky Boys is the name of the that particular track, which has a ton of stuff under it. But yeah, my point here is that I don't think that we would end up with this many tracks. I think that's really unlikely. Yeah, I also end up having a lot messier names than shaders. And I think what Philadelphia says is pretty accurate there. That you often have a lot of like intermediates that you don't really need good names for. But that said, it's very easy, especially if you're doing like a lot of remarching stuff, to get a really messy shader. So I think the variable names scale with the shader in my experience, as they should. I think that variable names scaling proportional to the scope in which they cover, I think, is a decent rule of thumb anyway. But yeah, I think actually I'm arriving at something that, like, conceptually I like. I still am a bit undecided on whether I want to have this curve editor separate from this sequencer. But probably I do like this idea of having it separate. I also think the amount of clips there are is probably going to be fairly few. I mean, I know that that's obviously going to scale with the length of the demo and stuff, but like, the reason why I'm thinking about that is in terms of storage, because this is for a 64K after all, and having start and end times being doubles for everything is going to be potentially not very good, because we could end up with a lot of very different values. However, if a lot of things were snapped, and we have snapping where we could enable like BPM snap, I think that would solve a lot of things. Also, it may make sense to reformulate this as start time and duration, because a lot of clips like this then might be better. And we could also play with different encodings. So for example, we could delta code these, which I know for like notes and things that we do in the synth makes a lot of sense. Delta coding events, especially if we start having like a lot of these that are on drum hits, then these will happen in a very periodic fashion, and then having their start positions delta coded is really effective. I'm just going to save this file here. So I have that. I think it's really valuable to wireframe like this before starting. I've made the mistake of not doing this too many times. Yeah, I forgot I actually do have this vertical scroll bar set up already. That's fun. I just like this scene, you guys. Nothing happens in it, but I like it. And these reflections are really cool. Totally screen space. Anyway, I think I'm ready to kind of get started hacking some of this together. There's also like, how does the UI work for creating new ones of these? And in Ableton, so what I always end up doing is I select a bit of time and then I create a new thing in that. I actually don't know if there's a different way to do that. There's a create thing here, insert MIDI track, insert return track. It doesn't give me the option to insert a clip, so I think I have to like select a region and then create. No, oh no, that's because I'm not on a MIDI track. All right, so if I'm on a MIDI track, for example, if I do create, that still doesn't give me insert MIDI clip. If I do that, there it is. Yeah, so that's actually the normal way you do this. Is you select a bit of time and then you create one. And maybe that's actually a good way to do it here too, because if I already need the concept of like selection, although that actually changes some things too, because here when you select, your selection box kind of sticks around, and then you've selected this bit of time. And if you select, I guess, a region of time on a specific track, then you can create clips there. So that's another thing we have to think about. But I think maybe that's natural, because like if I select, maybe I'll have sort of the select thing kind of here, and then I can right click, and I think this doesn't work. So yeah, I've selected multiple tracks here, which again is not a distinction that makes sense in our tool here. Because yeah, sometimes you want to select like all these clips. I can move these around now, although it takes a while. There. So I know that whenever I worked with technical artists, which haven't done for many years, and it wasn't in games, it was for like, I mean, we did some small games, so it was mostly tech demos. We typically wrote custom tools, and then the technical artists, like we would write those tools to like integrate in some other package, and the technical artists would use those. So like we had a guy that was extremely good in Unity, and so we would kind of try and make sure he had a workflow that either matched what he was doing there or just integrated with Unity. But he also didn't mind getting sort of down and dirty in Visual Studio sometimes either, so that was obviously a big benefit. But yeah, that guy is working on Tailspire now. Extremely talented technical artist. I don't think he ever wrote any shaders. Hey, CPDT. Oh, does it, Sari? That'd be great if you could share a link. It'd be cool to look at that. The id toolset. Hey, Static. So I also want, in terms of like a selection UI, I want to be able to like select clips just like I do on the grid here, where I select them and then I have that. But it might make sense to like be able to select a region of time as well. But maybe that's what I do. Maybe whenever you select in the timeline, you get kind of a time selection box that kind of lingers, and then you can right click and like create a clip in there. Or another way I could do it is I could like click and drag to create. So up here, what I do is I just have like every key on my keyboard maps to a different operator, which is a really shit UI, but it totally works. And maybe I can do like control click, and then that would create a new clip. Maybe that's actually really natural, because if the mouse is already snapping to positions down here anyway for like selection and everything, I think that would be really natural. So I could do like a control click kind of thing. Yeah, I kind of like that actually. Yeah, working on sequencer stuff. A lot of discussion about how this might work, but I think I'm arriving at something. But I need to take a quick break. So I'm going to come back in like 2 minutes. And I'm back. Yeah, I did see the Atlas sequencer, and that was, I think, quite similar to what I'm arriving at here. Definitely. Pixelate edges and shadow mapping for your cascades. Yeah, that really depends. Cascades is good if you have like a lot of distance. But what did I do? I did some Poisson sampling at some point that was really good. The other thing I imagine too is, I mean, this is getting off topic because the graph editor is going to be something else, but I imagine this view and then the graph editor or the operator view are probably not going to be in the same, not visible at the same time. One of the things that I know I want to compile down to operators in the operator grid, but I don't want that compilation to actually modify the operators that are there or like add to them. I want that to be like a separate set of operators that isn't part of the data model. And I need a way to view those for debugging as well. So what I'm working on, the compilation step, which is part of the project, that I see the graph that I'm compiling, and then I have the code in a separate editor, and then I should see the output visualized as an operator grid as well. So I might need a separate view for that. We'll see. That's just something I'm thinking about. Yeah, that is a good point, Trevor. That Poisson and changing the sampling patterns and using TA is probably quite good. I haven't tried it, but I imagine there's probably papers on doing like stochastic shadows or something. Because you could almost do a shadow map and have its own resolve, like some kind of shadow buffer, and have its own like edge aware resolve, like you do for a lot of the other passes. Or like you do when you have TA, at least. Which is the other thing that I want to work on at some point. And that's work that I should stream. Because again, the TA that we have, that I did last May, which is what's here, is still pretty good. But it's not done. Not done by any means. But yeah, I think I fleshed out enough here to start coding. I said that like 3 times, but yeah. And I think the easiest way to do this is just make a clip by default. So you don't really worry about instantiating any of these. Yeah. The other thing I have to do, and one of the reasons I haven't picked up the TA again, is I found out that I've been using transpose projection matrices for the lifetime of Logicoma, and I'm really annoyed about it. I figured out in like November and like what I need to do about it, but I need to sit down and fix that, and I think that'll be the first actual change that I'm going to make to the tool, where I'm not going to update all the old demos. I might update Dope on Wax just to keep something for testing, but I'm probably going to break all the old demos. So that's shit. But yeah, so the clip then we have, I'm actually going to do it like this, organize it this way. The clip is going to be in this part of the sequencer, and we're going to have these different slots that a clip can be in. So a clip has a slot index, because again, the slots are not really any physical thing. They're just a way to visualize these. And then a start time and end time. And the other thing is that clips should never be able to overlap. I don't know if I said that, but I think I want that to be a caveat. So you'd use different slots if you wanted, for example, this case, where they're slightly overlapping. So snapping should take care of like this case, for example. And if I do this, then what I actually want to happen is that this would happen. And this would actually not shrink, but get truncated, which is another thing. I also think in the tool, like if you truncate a clip like this, if this clip has, for example, this curve, if you truncate it, I want the bounds to change here. So I want it to be something like this, where I didn't visualize this right, but the point is like the clip would still be here, but you could see the bounds that are around the curve. And in Ableton, I can show that actually. So for example, if I have this little bit of MIDI here, and then if I go and I cut that in half, if I look at this, you can see this clip. Oh, that actually didn't work as I expected. Let's do this, or just make it shorter. Here you can see the clip itself. Or did this not do what I wanted? It should have. Yeah, the clip here is still the full clip. But I don't know why. Because normally I think it's this one that we get that like snaps. But I don't know why the UI isn't doing what I expect. Okay, but like this one has separate things. It's sort of the beginning and end of this. And if I copy this, do I get all of it? Or is that its own clip now? Yeah, I actually got all of it, and you can see here's the stuff before and after, which is kind of cool. And again, if I change this, it only affects this one instance, because now these are separate clips. So we're gonna have the same workflow there. One random thought I just had, Trevor. If you're going to do TA, I actually would recommend doing that ASAP anyway, because all of like your highlights and everything are going to change. So before you make any actual content, I think you're going to need to do that. And I don't know what like your depth of field setup and everything looks like, but it's all going to change. I know that if I were starting an engine from scratch, I think I would do that as one of the earliest things. But I don't plan on starting an engine from scratch. Okay. So yeah, start time, end time, and then of course these are gonna have like I do want colors. I don't know what that's gonna look like yet, but I do want some kind of visualization like that. The other thing I thought about actually is when I spawn clips, for example, there's actually two separate kinds of clips. Maybe. I still am a bit unsure about that. And I can just start talking in code now. Something like this, where clip contents is either curves, and then here we would have public, but yeah, this would be curves, or maybe even just like a vector of curve, something like that. And this would have whatever data we need for curves. And a curve, I guess it would have some target name, which is going to be a variable. And this might also be, for example, some kind of call. And then you might have the name of the function. And so then it would represent calling that function every frame. And that function would probably be also described as operators. So even here, like we have these subroutines. So we could say call this, and it would do that. The one kind of issue is that a lot of these scenes are actually meant to be invoked several different times. So depending on like the pass, because a scene might it might have one subject that's meant to be drawn normally and then another subject that's meant to be drawn as a post pass. And I think like I don't really need a scene to all be self-contained in the same function anymore. But at least like all the geometry needs to be done that way. And then you have like the light pass and everything that's separate too. So this may not be sufficient to capture that actually. Not so sure. You know, it might actually be that what I end up doing is saying the contents are always curves, and then you would actually have clips to set the scene, like a variable that represents the scene to a certain value, and have that dispatched somewhere else. And as long as the graph compilation stuff can compile to something that uses that naturally, that may actually be pretty good. Because we just, with this kind of engine, we just can't really have the whole scene described as one call unless we have function pointers that we can set. And I don't want to support that in the operator grid. I don't want to support, like the only variable types I have here are doubles and 4x4 matrices, and I don't want to add additional types. Yeah, first class functions would be similar, which I don't want. I don't want that here. Too messy. Don't want that. So maybe I could get this kind of workflow still actually, because I could call a function that would be the name of that scene, for example, that would just set like the scene variable somewhere, which would actually work. Again, if I have this compiler set up, I think that would be fairly nice. So from a user perspective, you'd go into this editor and you'd navigate to whatever the scope is, because I think this would also need like breadcrumbs and stuff. Because I want these to be let's see. I want there to be scopes in here within the in the node editor. So if you had, for example, breadcrumbs, you'd be able to navigate to sort of whatever the root was, and then there you would add a new scene, and then you could add a clip that would call that scene. Because we could generate ones where we have a couple different functions for the different kinds of rendering we need to do in the scene that would cover all the different objects. Yeah, I think this would work. And that wouldn't be too bad at all, actually. So we'd go there, we'd create a new node, and then that would create the function that we would want, and then we'd add a call here. Although it still does mean we need to support two different kinds of clips, which is still more than one. So that's a conditional in the editor, which will actually be several. But at least then it kind of hides a lot of those details. So I actually do think I want this. But then the other downside is that then I actually need to make proper support in the compiler for exposing all the different subroutines that are in the compiled code, which was never something that I intended to do, but could work. I mean, I do use it that way in the actual operator grid, so it might actually be a good idea. But it was definitely never the intention. So we'll have to think about that. So then actually what I want to do is I want to remove this for now, because that has a lot of other implications. And then we can work on this and just commit to this for now. Yeah, I'm happy enough with this. And then I guess I still don't want to work on spawning as the first feature. That's not very fun. So I'm going to do this. And then we can do some basic clip. Something non-zero. Just add a couple. And we'll just give them empty curves for now. Not worry about that yet. And there's no reason why these need to be in a particular order, so we can do that, for example. Time 10 and time 11. There's never going to be a negative duration, so maybe duration is actually the way I want to model this instead. I mean, it doesn't really matter because these are not unsigned values anyway, but yeah, I think this will make it easier to manage. Just some random values. So then it comes to actually representing these and getting them into the UI. And I think the first thing I need to do is double check what I've done here. So I know this sequencer, that's not the file I wanted. This jumps around a lot, I've noticed in VS Code. I'm trying to make the switch now, but does some real annoying things. Let's see. Scrubber, that's what I called it. What was the fancy word I learned for that I kept saying earlier today? Playhead. I think we're gonna call that the playhead now. Which I like. I like the idea of a playhead. It reminds me of tape. That's probably where it comes from. But this looks like it's all custom, actually. There's a sequencer, and then I think the transport is separate. Which I guess makes sense. So it looks like the transport is the stuff up here, and then beneath here we have what I call the scrub area, which is up here. And then this is the scrubber, but again, I'm probably going to call that playhead. Oh, that's why. So if I do this, it's fine. Yeah, that probably makes my life a lot easier. Yeah, that's what I want. That's great. So yeah, I can click around the scrub area and it draws everything. And it looks like I've done this track switch. Now I'm not going to do tracks. This is going to be slots. So it looks like I did this full custom, and I think I'm going to continue to do that. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, here we have some mapping from seconds to pixels and back. I have this reflect function, which is going to get all the stuff it needs from the model. One of the things here is, yeah, we have the set minimum width for the seconds to pixels thing, and I think we're going to need to do the same for the height, depending on how many slots the stuff actually uses. Clip max track, for example, is, I think that's at the top here. But that is now going to be clip max slot. And I think I wrote 20 only to have this minimum height thing here. I think that is actually going to depend on the actual contents. And so then I think actually having a clip min slot is actually what I want there. Now, you didn't really miss anything, Chief Sector. I'm just still... I mean, I guess I did start writing code a little bit, but not really. So yeah, what I probably actually want here is like a clip min slot, because I actually don't want a max slot. I want to make this as high as we need it. So minimum height is, why is this +1? I guess that was an inclusive bound for the max. So if I do min, this is inclusive, then this should actually be this. So the default min height is this. And right, so I actually do draw small rectangles. Did I? I don't think I see those. Yeah, there are actually faint lines here, which I guess was going to be the different slots. But I can't see them because there's so much light in here, which is fine. I want to keep them fairly dark because I like having a dark tool. The Soulseeker, did it expire today or did it expire a long time ago? I think it expired like a year and a half ago, and I need to update that. Got a pro over here, you guys. By that I mean I am so good at updating those certificates. Something like that. And I'm going to make this 2 just to test really quick. Then we actually need to pull real data out of the model. Yeah, what did I say? It wasn't Let's Encrypt, but it was something. I don't remember the service I use now. A few years ago when I started buying that stuff. But yeah, I should change it to Let's Encrypt and also set up the stuff that'll just automatically update that, which I didn't do. 47, what did I break? What? What the hell did I mess up here? Did I like accidentally have some weird character in there or something? Should just be that. It does say sequencer 147, just right here. What? Is it name conflict? Why? It's slots and slot? Should be fine. Apparently this appears in declaration with no variable identifier, such as if you had done this, which I don't think I've done. So is there like a... Oh, you know what I bet it might be? I sure hope it's not. But this might be an issue with Qt and the name slots. I think it was. That's not good. Okay, so here, okay, this is why I had like that min, because there's that, right. Because now this is tiny, because I only have room for one slot here. I think I'm doing min slots, I want to call this. Yep. That's going to be annoying since I called this slot, but I'm going to go with it. I'm just happy I knew it, or I could figure that out. Otherwise, this would have been real fun. Nah, I'm gonna be stubborn and call it slots. I think that'll be okay. I'm not too worried about it. Nice one, Chief Detector. I don't think I've ever used super glue with gloves, and I regret it every time. Yeah, I could always call it Slotty Boy. And you guys get it. Yeah, but I actually think I do want, for example, like 20 here or whatever. So we always draw that many slots, because the issue here is that otherwise this is just going to be tiny. Which it still is. No, that's just how I have this editor set up. It is possible to scrub here. Although, should have... No, it is drawing them, actually. Right. That's fine. Anyway, I want to pull out the actual slots from the actual thing, which is the point. So what do we do for that? We need to expose stuff all the way down. I haven't done this in years, so we're going to have some fun. Luckily, the model is not very complicated. Again, it's just this, so we can even do that. Then we start. Now, if I remember correctly, I usually start with this part, the C API, because this makes the most sense to me. And I like to keep the order of these all kind of the same as well. Which is why I have stuff like this stuff here. And I guess I made a decision to keep zoom as part of the state here, but not time or whether or not it's playing, which is fine. But then after that, I guess there's the clips, which here you have the selected ops, which that's going to need to be changed because we need to like get selection type and stuff as well. But first, I think it's just this. So this will be a N32T, which I think should be a UNT32T, but doesn't really matter too much to me. We'll do this. So this will be editor context get. What do I do for operators? Selected ops count, but that's not what I want. Get op count. So we can do get clip count. This. Pacific Ghost, thanks for the follow. Yeah, and then we need to go and modify that. So that's going to end up in... Yeah, there's sampler 2D shadow. What you actually want to do is use sampler 2D shadow and then do Poisson on top of that. It's even better. Then you have like a multiplicative effect. With the two kernels. Yeah, anyway, this is in lib, I think. No, it's not. It's in editor context C API. Right. Yeah, these are the callbacks from Rocket, which of course we ignore. Have to reacquaint myself with this code a little. But I know it's not that bad. Yeah, so this is where we expose it in the Rust layer. No mangle. And pub extern function. Editor context is not the one I want. I want get clip count. And this takes in a context, which is normally just a void pointer. And that's going to return, and I32 is how we expose that interface. And so then we do the same thing. We deref the context, and then we call this function on the context, which this will be get clip count. So if we go to get sequencer zoom, we can just do it here. So pub fun get clip count self returns in I32, and then here we do self.model store.model.clips.len as I32. If we go up and say like get op count, that should look the same. Yeah, it does. Yeah, I think that's exactly where I got that information, Trevor. And then I think out of laziness, because I would have had to add sampler 2D shadow support to the tool, which I didn't want to do for Dope on Wax. So I think I actually don't do that. I think I just do the Poisson stuff. Or maybe this was for Trash Panda where I originally did that. I don't remember, but yeah. So we actually don't do that. So you now have more advanced shadows than we do. And then I think, I don't know how high up I make this go. I think iModel is able to get this. Yeah, I think I do this. And then I think that this editor context object ends up having all these. That's where the CAPI is actually called. And then since we have it on iModel, anywhere we take one of those, we have it. So I think now the sequencer view down here, I think this has, yep, a model. Is this one? Which it gets from set context here. So that model there is the clip count. Right, so that's more or less how I do this. Yeah, that's the one, Alkama. It's a really good resource. Can definitely recommend. And I think one of the things we didn't do is that stratified Poisson that it mentions, where you also randomize the stuff in screen space. But that's something that I want to do now that we are getting TA. So that should be nice. Although hopefully the neighborhood clamp doesn't just wreck that. We'll have to see. I think, though, that would actually end up being just really good. And I think what I said about neighborhood clamp wrecking that is actually nonsense. But yeah, it's actually pretty useless to just get the counts. We need to get all this other information as well. So again, I usually start here and then kind of branch out to either side. So we had get clip count, and then we also have the getters for the individual ones. And so this will be, for example, int 32t editor context get clip, and then whatever the name is. So slot index, for example, where we take an editor context pointer, and then we also take an int 32t for the clip parameter. And then again, we go through the rounds. And this kind of work is where it's great to have a 4K screen. I've also actually thought about like maybe generating this from some description of the API, but I think it's fine enough to do by hand. We don't change the stuff that often. So here we do function. And when you get kind of in the zone, this stuff goes really quick. So this would be get clip slot index. Is that what I called it here? Just to make sure. Yep. Span self, and then I think index is I32, which I think is what I also use for these. And I say op actually, then I'll do the same thing here. I'll do clip. It's that self dot model store dot model dot clips clip as usize dot slot index as I32. DirectX 12 Super Champion Fighting Showdown Brawl Ultimate. What is that? Oh, that's what you mean, yeah. I wouldn't mind the hug shader. That'd be nice. And here we do basically the same thing. Just get clip slot index. Here, and then we just route clip there. And then again, we have to go up the stack. So there's this one, which is get clip slot index. And this again is int clip. And then we do the same. We don't need this one. We do the same on editor context. WJL row. Thanks for the follow. Hey, Diseased. And I also like to do stuff like this. Stdio, isn't it? Do I need IO stream for cout? I'm just gonna do that. Just for some debug printing. So here is where I like to start doing, like, for example, and we can do, yeah, model dot get clip count. That's actually what I wanted. That's what we have here. It's so nice with IntelliSense. I've actually never had IntelliSense for any of this project, which it's kind of crazy to think about considering how I lived in Visual Studio before this, but it works out, I guess. It's fine. Here you can see I'm mixing num slots and clip count. That's always fun. And I'm even going to use endl, which Bjarne frowns upon apparently. Let's see. Then we can do model.get. Printf is probably better anyway. Easier to do formatting. And then we can do, yeah, that's clip, so that's I. Like this. Blame it on the boogie, of course. Yeah, slot index of model clip is private, and that makes perfect sense because it is. I think, for example, op, which I think is defined in Opus. This is op, yeah, from Opus. So Opus ops. Yeah, except PuTTY on Windows actually requires the carriage return, which is stupid. Or maybe that's configurable, but I haven't tried. So in my Xenowing stuff, whenever it does stuff to UART, it actually outputs a carriage return, even though I would rather not. Oh, yeah, but of course this is public just because it's all, yeah, we'll just do that. We'll make this public, which, again, we want to do anyway, because we need to inspect all this, so I'm going to do this. good. I definitely want to fix all these warnings and just like do a proper update to the latest Rust, but I also don't want to do that, so we're not gonna yet. That's the kind of thing I feel like I'm wasting the stream's time if I do that. By the way, I just noticed that I got like a lot of followers the last few hours, so thank you guys so much for that. Much appreciated. I also just noticed in the demo scene Discord, someone said, no bad Ferris when I announced that I was streaming, so not sure what that's about. Oh, come on, thanks again for the sub. Can always count on you for hugs and subs. Okay, I just realized this would normally print whenever this renders. And it looks like it didn't print anything here, which is kind of strange. Oh, because it didn't actually build. I just didn't see the errors. Indeed, I do mean for model, we do want to dereference that. Or use the arrow operator, whatever you call that. There we go. Now sequencer built. Now, there we go. 120, which I think matches. And I think if I change this, yeah, if I scrub, we get a lot of these. But actually not that many. If I play, though, we should get drowned in this stuff. Okay, so we have the data from the model list. So that's nice. No, Qt does not use in the demos. The demos are 64Ks. So first of all, they don't have UIs. Second of all, yeah, that definitely wouldn't fit. So there's a, I can show the hierarchy a little in the source tree, because it's kind of neat. So there's several parts. I guess the main part is this Opus runtime. So Opus is just the name for this operator system, and Opus runtime actually doesn't know about the operators. This Opus layer does, because it's meant to compile those into a bytecode. So Opus runtime knows about the bytecode and can JIT those, and also has a lot of stuff for like the actual engine that bytecode relies on to run. And that Opus runtime has some lower level dependencies. For example, this tiny GL, tiny WGL, tiny Win32, but it's all no STD Rust. And then the tooling only uses this Opus layer and then this editor layer. But when we pack up an executable, I think basically its only dependency is, again, these tiny Win32 whatever creates. And then that's this Rivet project and then Opus runtime. So all the runtime stuff is all like very low level Rust with basically no dependencies. And then the editor kind of wraps up additional stuff and exposes a Qt layer on top of that. So I'm really happy to use it as a UI layer, but yeah, it's kept very far away from the intro code, which isn't very big. It's mostly just again, this engine code, which I think has a couple complicated things in here, mostly to, yeah, for example, the mesh decoder is probably the most complicated piece of code here, which isn't actually that bad because it's, I guess, fairly large. Still only, 250 lines of code or something. But yeah. Oh, did I draw the hierarchy? Thanks, Okama. You even have the timestamp. That's great. Man, I was fancy then. I wasn't even drawing in Paint. I was drawing in Photoshop. Yeah, that's that's a crazy drawing. But indeed, it hasn't changed. Rocket's going away. So yeah, I have this editor context in the C library, but the editor, yeah, this is where all the data model and stuff still lives. Oh no, that's what this was. This is the editor context is in here. And then the editor is on top of that, right? So it's actually in here. Yeah, this is where Opus is and everything, and the runtime and right. So yeah, the model in here is what we're modifying and then exposing through here. Okay, we're gonna get rid of Rocket. Bass we'll still use to play music back. And all of this is still the same. Again, here's Rivet and all these tiny things, and the Opus runtime also has those dependencies there. And then yeah, Wavesaber, that's true. Rivet also has a dependency on Wavesaber. Yeah, to be fair, I think it's white on like a light gray, so slightly less coder colors. But yeah, thanks Okama for finding that. That's definitely shows how this is organized. And yeah, that hasn't changed in 4 years or whatever. Right, so we can get all this information, and with this we can actually figure out how many, like what the max slot is. So in this case we see 120, which should exactly match what we had here. Of course it's correct. And then that's what I wanted to do. Let's do this. I'm gonna call this slot count so that we're somewhat consistent here. This is a clip count, and then we can do this. We can actually do int slot count is clip. Actually, we'll do this. What I think I wanted to do here is, oops. Yeah, I want to determine the number of slots like this. So we'll do int slot count, or we can do, I guess this is actually easier because we can do, yeah, slot count is min slots, and then we can always do this. I need to do this coding convention here. So if slot index is more than slot count, then slot count is slot index. So that way we always draw as many slots as we need, which should be fine. But that won't change anything so far. So we actually want to draw these clips here. So first we'll do this. We'll figure out the slot index, and then we'll actually start drawing all these. So here we go through all the slots, and I might actually just iterate over the clips several times in this loop, which is lazy but easy. No, actually we don't need to do that. It's better if we do this, for example. Also, instead of I think I want to use clip here. And we'll do the same here. And we'll do the same stuff here. It doesn't matter that we call this several times because this stuff is really fast. Oh, but yeah, I don't mean it's bad at all, actually, that that the organization of the project hasn't changed. In fact, I'm quite happy about it because like it's nice that we don't have to do a lot of editor work whenever we do a new demo. Basically, all the work that we have to do is adding new engine features. For example, like compressed messages or mocap, which is kind of the stuff you want there to be work on, because that's new stuff that we want to show off. So that's a natural place. And then of course you have all the content, which we're trying to make easier to author. So we get the slot index, and I might factor out some function here to determine this Y based on the slot index. But for now, I'm just going to duplicate it. Was that the rule of 3? You do something twice, and then after that, you start factoring out functions. I always like that. We will do these seconds to pixels and pixels to seconds thing, though, because we need to determine the start and end here. So we can do double start time is model get clip slot start time, and of course this doesn't exist yet, but we'll make it exist. Double duration is model get clip slot, whoops, not clip slot start time, that's stupid, get clip I can't talk, get clip duration, there we go. And then we can do double end time is start time plus duration, and then here we can actually just draw a rectangle. So if we go ahead and just take this stuff from the scrubber, which we can even do out here, although I think we actually want to do it in here because we're going to draw several things. And then we can draw a rect. And we actually need to do some conversions here. Just a second. So we can do, for example, double start X is seconds to pixels, and we give it the seconds, which is going to be start time, and then we have the zoom, which we need to know. I think that's just a variable called zoom here. And I don't know why. Yeah, I guess that's fine to have it as a variable like that. So give it the zoom. And then end X is seconds to pixels. Like that. And whenever I'm doing this like tick stuff, I do convert these to integers, this is a truncating conversion. And that is what I want actually. Because this doesn't change the values either, it just draws them. And then we're going to draw a rect, so that should be start X, and then basically going to copy this again. And then I think we do end X. And I think I want to do -1 here. And then we'll do clip height -1. And then here we need to expose all this. So we'll do double and I'll do duration at the same time. time. This is going to be F64. Okay, and then so slot index, we have start time again. And then duration. And then we do the same thing here. And here, I think we can just copy these. And here. These need to change too. Okay, and then we should have, yeah, this might just work. And we're coming up on 3 hours, so I might stop streaming pretty soon. I didn't realize it had been that long. Oh, what didn't I like about scrubber pause? I probably accidentally copied something I didn't mean to. Oh yeah, yeah, I copied the line drawing here, which is not what I wanted to do. Fine. Okay. And we have clips. There we go. Does this actually make sense for these though? Start 0, 0, and 10, yeah. 0, 1 start at 0 and 0. One of them is twice as long as the other, and the other one starts at 10, which you can see here with the tick marks is 10. So we're on our way. I think I am going to stop here, and then I'll just spend some time off the stream, probably cleaning up some errors. But first I'm going to take a break and have some lunch. So I got up at like 11, so I've only had breakfast. But I'm really happy about today's stream because mostly what we did is just talked about stuff and kind of fleshed out what I want the design to be. And I think that's far more important than any kind of code we could have written. So that's good. I also need to figure out how this just epically failed when I had an empty project to begin with. That was so strange. And never something I've seen before. It's so rare that this tool has bugs. So I'm a bit shocked at that. But yeah, I think we're on a great track. So yeah, thanks guys a lot for hanging out. I really appreciate it. I don't talk about numbers very much, but I definitely have like a higher viewer count when I'm streaming demo scene stuff than when I'm doing like FPGA or whatever. So anyway, I really appreciate that. I appreciate you guys sticking around and talking to me and helping me out. Sleep well, Trevor. And you too, probably CPDT. Maybe a few other guys. But yeah, thanks again for hanging out. I really appreciate it. And I do plan on doing this every Sunday for the foreseeable future, whatever that may be. But yeah, thanks again, guys, and I'll see you next time.